Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Mark Little, a comedian, actor, and writer you may recognize from Mr. D, Space Writers, Division Earth, or the brilliant short-lived Canadian sketch series Picnic Face. He voices the lead character in the very fun animated series Gary and His Demons, which is now streaming on CBC Digital in Canada and on Verve in the US, and he co-stars opposite Brett Gelman in Matthew Atkinson's Room for Rent, which is still playing theatrically in Winnipeg and Ottawa and newly arrived on iTunes and other digital platforms in the US and Canada. Mark picked The Monster Squad, Fred Dekker's gonzo 1987 horror comedy about a bunch of kids who find themselves tasked with saving their small town, and maybe the world, from Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the creature from the Black Lagoon. Co-written by Dekker and his film school buddy Shane Black, it tanked at the box office, but went on to achieve cult immortality on cable and video, and rightly so. It's a big, goofy mess, but it's got a great take on the classic Universal monsters and a surprising amount of heart. On an appropriately dark and stormy night, we got to talk about it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Oh, Monster Squad. I chose it because I went to see it last week. The sort of like pre-Halloween screening at the Royal.
It was like a Sunday 1 o'clock thing?
Yeah, it was actually my birthday.
Aww.
So I just like sent out an open invite to friends to meet me at the Royal and watch my favorite movie, which is the other reason I chose it, because it's like my favorite childhood movie. I owned it on VHS and just watched it several times a year for years and years and years. Yeah, and every time I watch it, it's just as fun. Obviously, specific elements have not aged as well in the language, really just in the first 20 minutes. But once you can sort of push past that, just like the writing is so tight and it's so much fun, and I don't understand how that is not the movie, in addition to maybe like E.T., that is like 80s cinema, 80s like fun cinema. Like I don't understand how that's not the thing that people are consistently pointing to when they're talking about 80s like preteen cinema.
Yeah, I think it's the curse of Fred Dekker in some weird way. This is this poor guy who made sort of delirious, marvelous, cheesy genre stuff, like self-aware genre films. They aren't cheesy, but they embrace the cheese of, having a Wolfman and a Gill Man and all that stuff. Yeah. His previous movie was Night of the Creeps, which is this tremendously entertaining zombie comedy.
Okay.
Set at a prom, high school, a university dance, I think maybe. Because it's set at a university, but it's you probably remember the poster, right? Like the good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a great movie. I mean, I remember that was 85 or 86. I was 17, I think. And it was just like, oh, this is what all horror comedies should be. This was right in that little window of Fright Night and Return of the Living Dead. And he made this movie, and anybody who saw it fell in love with it, but nobody saw it. It barely got distribution. And the same thing happened for The Monster Squad. I mean, they didn't get a major studio behind it. It was TriStar before they had the power of Sony or Columbia Pictures or whatever that unholy alliance was.
Gotcha.
And it just sort of slid past everybody. And I saw it theatrically at the time.
Right. And that's really what it was, huh? It was just like bad distribution. It didn't have, there wasn't any like concerns about the tone or sort of the adult content.
There was a whole wave of kids in horror right around that time, or kids in sci-fi mostly maybe.
Right.
My Science Project and Back to the Future and
right.
Because this does feel like there are a couple of direct nods to E.T. and the Spielberg Suburbia thing.
Totally.
Mostly with the Frankenstein's monster stuff. But it is, it's pretty easy to classify, right? It's some kids and some monsters.
Yeah.
And they're not quite the Universal monsters, which actually makes them kind of subversive in a weird way.
Yeah.
So they're just basically blatantly ripping off all the Universal imagery, but they're creating their own iconography out of them.
Yeah, like Gill Man?
Yeah.
Was that?
That's what they called the creature
term Gill
back
Man
in the day.
ever been... Was it really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But nobody knew it outside of the industry. This is the thing, like horror nerds like me who read Famous Monsters and Fangoria kind of knew that, but it was what they called them it's what they called the creature internally, which is weird because you'd think they just call it the creature.
The creature, yeah.
But yeah, 3 movies, and the Gill-Man was what they called him. And then I guess Gill-Man as a single word is fine. Like Wolfman is generic enough that no one can claim it.
Oh, man.
But it is, like, it's... I watched it again the other night in prep for this, and I think it had been maybe 10 years since I saw it, since the Blu-ray came out, probably. And 2 things struck me. One is that, oh my God, Shane Black and Fred Dekker have not changed at all, and they just wrote The Predator. Like, they're still doing this.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Predator. But
The Predator is a great deal of fun.
I'm excited.
The Predator is... I mean, because it basically puts you back in an 80s mode.
Right.
In a present-day mentality.
But that worries me because so few things do that in a way that I actually enjoy. Like, I feel like they poach the wrong things and ignore the important stuff, and then you end up with, like, Stranger Things, which just feels like a shell.
Stranger Things, yeah, it's exactly. I still don't understand why everybody got so excited. I mean, I do understand, because it is simply, like, it's the reptile brain of recognition, where it's like, oh, I know this thing.
Yeah.
And that's enough to just see it.
I like the bare bones of this aesthetic. Like, I like the broad strokes of it. And I don't need the soul of it. Yeah, I literally recognize the font. I think that's part of it. It bummed me out. I watched the first season, and I was like, for me, like, the most important thing about, like, Amblin era, like that 80s Amblin, or like Monster Squad or other movies that sort of piggybacked that genre at the time, was like, when the trouble started, the kids didn't stop having fun. It was like, they're having fun when you meet them, they're like scamps who rip on each other, and then some massive thing gets thrown in their path, and they decide to take it on because the adults aren't going to do it and no one will believe them. But even through that, they keep bickering, they keep, like, roasting each other, they roast the monsters or whatever the thing is, like, you know, it's E.T., it's Monster Squad, it's Goonies, it's all that stuff. They just keep the patter up, so that there's that, like, light charm to it all, that sort of kid Indiana Jones vibe, or kid Star Wars. And in Stranger Things, I remember, like, when it started, and they were, like, playing that weird chess game, and they were ripping on each other, I was like, here we go. And then it was like, as soon as the danger struck, they were just terrified kids, like, screaming in fear and running and playing it like drama. And I just thought, no, man, this is what happened to the spirit of this. Like, it's not fun anymore, except that one character, that, like, cool kid who's, like, a bit older with the high hair. Right, he was fun. The
not John Ralphio, the
not John Ralphio,
Ben Schwartz, but isn't.
Steve. Yes. Steve was a joy.
Steve is a joy. But yeah, no, my problem with Stranger Things too is the same thing. It's like it's so completely obsessed with getting the details right that it forgets to have story. Yeah. Like, it's not enough to just say, it's Firestarter meets this, plus there's a St. Bernard running around just because we can, because we know people will get that. And it's like, okay, fine. But if you're making a Stephen King movie or story, a Stephen King-esque story, there's a character in the show reading Firestarter or Cujo. I think he's reading Cujo. And I remember just thinking, no, you're not allowed to do this. If Stephen King exists in this world, people can look at each other and go, hang on, this is weird.
It's a bit too cute. It's a bit too, like, check out our references. It's cloying for sure. One movie that I thought got the soul of 80s movies so right a couple years ago was The Guest. Did you watch that? Oh my God, that, because it didn't, on the one hand, it, like, was not an 80s movie, but then it just was. It had that, like, obviously it had the John Carpenter music, but then just the soul of it.
The attitude of it, There's a moment.
It felt good.
This has just come up a couple of weeks ago, I think, when that movie clarifies itself. The scene with Lance Reddick, where it just tells you what kind of movie it is, finally. Yeah. It's a joy.
I would argue when that movie decides to be a second type of movie, but I don't mind that.
No, because it gives you the backstory for every 80s slasher movie that never happened, or all, like, it's the scene I was always waiting for a Friday the 13th movie that explains why they can't kill him, and it's like, okay, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any other movie, Like, that scene was handled just elegantly enough for me to be like, fine.
Yeah.
Whatever you need to say to start the second half of this, where now you're hunting this super, like, programmed super soldier through small town America. Like, sure, fine, whatever. Like, I don't really buy this scene, but it's enough.
Yeah.
It's just like a little pocket of exposition to be like, can we have fun in a second type of way now? And I'm like, sure, man.
Yeah. Well, it's an invitation, right? Like, it's telling the audience it's going to be, we know what we're doing, it's going to be okay, come with us.
Totally.
And yeah, Monster Squad, where you have real stakes. I mean, people get killed and people get shot, and
it's like, a guy gets dynamited by Dracula.
By Dracula, which you just know.
The best character in the movie too. Dracula dynamites him. That cop is terrific. I was not prepared for how funny that cop partner was.
That is the Shane Black influence. I'm positive. Like, that's the guy who. It's Lethal Weapon, right? The friend who says, like, I'm masculine, I'm in touch with my emotions. The other night I cried in bed. Were you alone? Yeah, I was alone. Why do you think I was crying? It's like, that's that guy. That's this dialogue.
Yeah. So fast, so thrown away. What does he say? He just keeps having lines like, I'm a very good police officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I'm a very good police officer. You know this about me.
Yeah, and in an 82-minute movie, the stuff that they keep, like those character beats, those little tiny moments, like all the weird jokes about how a mummy couldn't just get up and walk away, which... You know, the audience is ahead of these characters because the movie is called The Monster Squad. There's going to be a mummy in it.
Oh, I love how many scenes end with someone saying something and then just smash cut to the opposite happening or the exact thing happening. Like, I love it. It's so quick and fun. The way they end that scene where he's like, the point is, a 2,000-year-old dead guy does not get up and walk away on his own. And then... boom, cut to a mummy walking down the street, and you're following that mummy for like 3 seconds, and then the camera pans over, and you've got an ambulance coming towards you, and there's a werewolf in the back of the ambulance turning into a werewolf, but the kid driving it's listening to like heavy metal, so he can't hear what's going on. Oh my god. What a joy. It just moves so fast.
Yeah. So, I can imagine, like, when you're a kid, you've never seen... There wouldn't have been anything like this, like a movie quite like this.
No, because I wasn't super into horror at the time, and I was, like, befuddled by horror comedy. Like, horror comedy just... There was something tonally that didn't sit right, so I avoided it at all costs. But this one worked. And I think this one worked just because it was fun.
And how old were you when you first saw it?
I would have been like 10, I think.
Okay, so you're the perfect target age.
Yeah. And then it was just like consistent rewatches from then on. But I remember watching this, and then I remember watching like Army of Darkness was the other one where I was about 12 years old, and I saw that and I was like, tonally something's going on here that I don't fully get, but it's fun enough that I'm in.
Right. Yeah. We just covered Army of Darkness a couple of weeks ago with Justin Decloux, and he had the same experience. He came across the ending of it, I think, and just didn't understand it, and was fascinated by the swords and the skeletons, that stuff.
Right.
And it's just like, this is a movie. This is a thing that I need to know more about.
Yeah.
And the horror comedies when I was a kid were terrible. Like, other than Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is the only one that was any good.
I just watched that.
It's like, that holds up, right? Like, that somehow feels...
It's just them, you know? That's what I'm saying about, like, don't stop being you when the threat comes.
Yeah.
You gotta be more you than ever.
Yeah. And
keep that pattern.
Yeah, and let the audience know that it's okay to root for the monsters, too. Like, that it's kind of fun. Dracula, in this movie... there's a whole chunk of it in the documentary on the Blu-ray, which is amazingly detailed, but people still talk about, apparently, Duncan Regier's Dracula as one of the best Dracula performances. Wow. And it's because he doesn't condescend.
Yeah.
Other than the one big, goofy, there will be no one to stop us, laugh, scream, thing.
But what a scene.
Yeah.
What a scene.
It is, like, who was it? I can't remember who it was, but somebody once said that Dracula, maybe it was Gary Oldman, Dracula being an immortal being, living in isolation for so long, would slowly forget how to moderate, and everything would be huge, or everything would be really, really small.
Right.
And Oldman was, like, that was his, I think it was Oldman, it was either him explaining it or someone explaining the performance. Right. That is the reason he is so big when he meets Keanu Reeves, with all the swooping and the moving. It's like, he doesn't know what he looks like. He's been doing this for 100 years.
That might be the coolest movie I've ever seen in my life. The
Coppola.
Just as a sidebar.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's so well shot. It's so cool, and man, all of the stuff with like all the shadow stuff, where it appears before he appears and after he appears, and the way it moves through the walls and the way he like scuttles down the side of the building. Oh man, that movie is cool as hell.
Yeah.
Does it just have... It has like a mixed rep just because of Keanu Reeves, right?
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah, just because of the accent.
Yeah, and the midsection is really stiff. Just the stuff before Dracula shows up again, there's a lot of just sort of marking time.
Yeah.
But...
Fair enough.
And again, if you don't...
But the three suitors, a lot of fun.
Yeah. And if you don't buy into to what Oldman is doing, like, apparently people think it's a terrible performance. Like,
what?
Yeah, no, it's...
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's ludicrously tragic. It's just so fully felt.
Massive. But in such a good way.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way it's shot matches that. Mm-hmm. It's...
Yeah. We're reaching a point now where I don't think it's intentional. I'm sure it's not intentional, but The Simpsons has poisoned a lot of entertainment by being there first in kids' minds. Like, if you... Dana Gould said once that you could watch all of Citizen Kane or all of Planet of the Apes in The Simpsons now. You could build it out of all the references that pretty much everything has been done.
Right.
And so now when you see... Because that was one of the very first Treehouse of Horrors, was the one where Mr. Burns was Dracula, and it was the Gary Oldman Dracula.
Oh, right.
And so now people see that, and they see that first because they're younger, and then when they catch up to Bram Stoker's Dracula, the little thing in the back of their head, even if they don't fully understand it, is going, this is dumb.
Yeah, this is laughable.
Silly.
Yeah.
And I think a generation has been dented.
Interesting. I mean, I probably would have seen that too before. I remember like being young and seeing it, and something just didn't quite sit right. And I think it is because, like, story-wise, it's not a perfect movie. It does get slow at certain points, like you mentioned, and even like the parts where it's like ramping up to climactic moments feel a little bit not there. It's just the aesthetic of it is so great that now when I watch it, that trumps everything.
Yeah,
I can just like don't see movies made like that. I can't believe they made it that way. Like, it's so nice to look at. But I wonder if... So I guess what I'm saying is I wonder if it's people being poisoned by it, or if it's just like they'll get into it eventually. Yeah, like grow out of The Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean, it's a film of... It's about deep, tragic melancholy too. You have to be in the right frame of mind for that in a horror movie to understand it.
I only just realized watching it that, like, Dracula's, so I don't know, when I watched it, sorry, total sidebar,
no,
but
sure.
I was trying to figure out how shortly after The Last Temptation of Christ, Bram Stoker's Dracula was made, because I think it's 4 years?
4 years, 88 and 92.
Because it's like, I think it's the story of The Last Temptation of Christ, where Dracula is Christ. It's like the last shot, because he's like a soldier for God, the ultimate soldier for God, and he goes out on his crusade, and then he returns, and because his enemies have tricked his wife, his one true love, into thinking that he died, she's taken her own life, and then he blames God, and like screams to the heaven and curses God or whatever, like stabs the crucifix, I can't remember what he does, and then he becomes Dracula. He's like cursed to this like living death, and then he lives out this entire like life as Dracula, where he and then tries to like anyway blah blah blah, goes through the movie as we know it, and then in the end re-finds God and then dies at peace. It's kind of the same story.
It's not dissimilar. I mean, those things are tied together so deeply too that we keep consciously and unconsciously revisiting those two things together because of
Dracula and Christ.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, there was
in what's his name's Dracula,
the Gerard Butler one. Yeah,
the Gerard Butler
2000,
one. He was Judas,
which is genius. I mean, when it drops in the movie and it's like you're going for it, that's so cool. That's why he doesn't like silver. It's somebody who's been obsessing over presumably Catholic screenwriter who's been obsessing about this for his whole life.
I felt like that movie sucked ass, but all the Judas stuff where it was like, boom, now we're back in that time, and it's shot like all those like beautiful reds and oranges, like full sunset shots always, with the like silhouette of the tree and Judas hanging from the tree, and it looks like something out of Oklahoma. That sequence was amazing. Yeah. And then the way he died, like in flames hanging from a tacky like Vegas cross off the side of a building. Those parts were awesome.
That is the Dracula I want.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go with the evening wear, brooch wearing, amulet carrying, slick back hair, tuxedo Dracula, Duncan Regeer.
Sure.
People take him seriously. People value that performance.
We're talking about Monsters.
I can bring it back another time.
Wait, what? So, and I only just recognized him when I just watched it last week, but...
He was on V?
No, I'm not... Sorry, not him. The guy who played Frankenstein.
Oh, Tom Noonan.
Tom Noonan!
Yeah,
it's Tom Noonan! That's nuts!
Yeah, it is. Apparently, they had seen him in Red Dragon, or somebody was... One of the producers... Yeah, this
Manhunter.
is the thing... Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, the book was called Red Dragon. I keep doing that. The thing I didn't realize is one of the producers is Rob Cohen, who went on to direct Fast and the Furious. He made the first Fast and the Furious movie. Weird. Subsequently, and he and Peter Hyams were working in some capacity as executive producers or something on... They were involved with the development of Manhunter. They were working with Michael Mann, and they saw Noonan on that, and it's like, oh, he's tall, he could do it.
Wow.
And his physicality was the thing that led them to it, but it's a great performance.
It's amazing.
He's really good.
It's like, I can understand why people might have problems with the script or with the story, because there are certain critical things that are just like, you just gotta gloss over. like what made Frankenstein become friends with these kids? That's never explained. No. Except we're supposed to suppose that, like, he always had a bit of a good heart, I guess.
This is the little girl he didn't throw in the lake.
And that's right.
Just the way they set that moment up, too, which I remember seeing it theatrically and not knowing, because that scene hadn't been restored yet, or the...
Wait, which scene?
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen this scene.
In the original Frankenstein, the James Whale film in 1931, the monster kills a little girl.
Damn.
And she's dressed almost exactly the same way Phoebe is in the film. Yeah, and she's throwing petals onto a lake, watching flowers float.
Okay.
And then she gives him a petal and he throws it in. And finally there's a shot of him running out of petals and looking at the little girl and reaching forward into the camera, and it was removed for a long time. You never see it.
Right.
But then they restored it, and it's very disturbing. Yeah. And Dekker and Black clearly know about this.
Yes.
And that scene is designed to make you think he's going to kill the girl, and instead she wins him over with her effervescent 5-year-old personality.
Yeah. And I would say that that's amazing, and that is an indication of the problems with this story. Critical plot points rely on your knowledge of previous films that are not related to this film.
55 years ago, if I've done that correctly. It is The Creature from the Black Lagoon was fairly recent by comparison.
Right.
Films were made in the 50s and 60s. But yeah, this is not a movie for kids. It's a movie for their parents who grew up on black and white TV.
Right. Yeah. Little nods there.
Yeah. And I think the biggest problem facing the movie is that as soon as they didn't get Universal's interest and couldn't use the licensed monster designs, because those were all copyrighted. Like I can never remember the guy's name, but the Jack something, the guy who designed the Boris Karloff makeup for Frankenstein,
right,
was a big deal. They copyrighted it in the 40s.
Gotcha.
And so Hammer had to come up with something different when they were making the Christopher Lee movies, and then here as well. Because they're not instantly recognizable on the poster, I think that pushed people away a little bit.
I see.
And you just couldn't quite see Frankenstein's monster. The bolts are in his temples instead of his neck, and it's all a little wrong. And that seems to have worked against it at the time. But also, I think the fact that there's a kid that looks like Corey Haim who isn't Corey Haim, or Corey Feldman. No, he looks more like Corey Feldman in Lost Boys, which is a coincidence.
Are you talking about Rudy?
Yeah, because that was the same year as the Lost Boys. And
right.
They couldn't have known.
Right.
But he just looks just like him.
And Lost Boys was so popular.
Yeah, it was huge. And I think this was one of those things where it looked like a knockoff because it came out a month later.
Right.
Even though if you thought about it for 2 seconds, there's just no way.
Yeah.
But we were in a less enlightened age.
That's right. I still feel like we are less enlightened in that way. But I can't think of examples to prove that.
Well, I'm sure there's a few. Well, now it's just more blatant when the clone movies come out, and there's like Deep Impact and Armageddon, and you know, you can see which projects were duplicates of somebody else's, or an echo of some script that went around 10 years before.
Ants and Bugs Life.
Yeah. Same window of time.
So I just want to address some of the things you got to gloss over in Monster Squad.
Yes, I was going to say Rudy is one thing.
Rudy, I love. Oh yeah, Rudy. You just have to buy that the coolest, like, teenager in town. He's like dead cool, like so sweet. Leather jacket, Ray-Bans, smoking cigarettes,
dirt bike.
Yeah, dirt bike or BMX that he rides like a dirt bike.
Boy with edge.
A boy with edge still has no friends except for these like 3 10-year-olds who want to hang out with him. Fine.
Right. And one younger kid too, right?
And
Isn't
one,
there like a 5-year-old or
Pete or something, or Pete's his dog.
Pete's the dog.
Eugene. Yeah.
Eugene, that's right.
Eugene, who, again, my favorite part of the movie is Eugene writing the letter to the military guys
Dear
in
Army
crayon.
guys.
Dear Army guys. And then sealing it and mailing it, and then the Army guys show up. When I was explaining the movie to someone, it's very hard because I'm like, this movie fucking rules. It moves so fast. It's so sweet. Like, the stakes are real. And then I was like, oh, also, there's moments like the army shows up because a kid writes them a letter in crayon. And the friend I was telling this to was like, I don't want to see this. You're describing trash. And I was like, no, I don't know why. There's just something where once you reach that moment, it's done well enough that you don't give a shit. Yeah. But you also have to believe that Dracula, instead of just going and taking Van Helsing's diary, would call kid's mom and leave a message that he wants to meet about purchasing the diary and leave his name as Dracula spelled backwards.
Well, that's a universal thing. That's a callback in the 40s.
Okay.
I think in Son of Dracula, he's masquerading as Dr. Alucard.
Okay.
Which is then Dr. Dracula, so it's DR twice, which is just dumb. But yeah, I think one of the things of the universal Dracula was that he really did think he was a couple of leagues smarter than everybody else.
Yeah, he was just
no one will know. But his plans are terrible, which again I have to respect.
Yeah,
his whole idea. Yeah, he knows where the amulet has somehow ended up in what I assume is California. They never say where it is. Like, they never explain where the town is.
Yeah, I don't.
But it was in Germany 100 years ago, and now it's here.
Yeah.
In the basement of a building that I think they mentioned Van Helsing had followers or something, or disciples.
Okay.
So they clearly brought it to the New World and hid it here.
Yeah.
Okay, again, fine.
Yeah, I guess so.
Winona Earp just did an entire season where the Garden of Eden was located somewhere in Alberta. I accept this.
Sure.
It's all...
Canada, baby!
The Bible's all metaphor anyway.
Yeah, it's a metaphor for Alberta.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these things you have to accept.
Yeah, and then you start to get into the interpersonal stuff, which, again, I'm assuming these are the Shane Black touches, where the father-son relationship that the movie has no time for is still really good and rich.
It's wonderful. I mean, that's what zooms you through the cornier parts, because, that stuff is so great and detailed, and every time I watch it, I notice something different that I didn't realize, but in that moment, because, the entire movie, the mom and the dad are fighting, and it's like, he can't, like, Sean, the little kid, can't go see a movie with his friends because his dad needs him to babysit because he and his mom are going out tonight. What are they doing? They're going to a marriage counselor. Yeah. And he's still smoking, and Sean doesn't like that, blah, blah, blah. But then he has to cancel on the marriage counselor because some guy's downtown who's screaming that he's a werewolf, etc. But then in the scene where Dracula gets so pissed off that he just decides he's going to throw dynamite in the kids' clubhouse, and that's going to solve the problem. So in that scene, he throws that dynamite, he bombs the clubhouse, and he says, "Meeting adjourned." And then as he's leaving, cop dad and his partner show up and, like, try to shoot at him, and his partner gets dynamited, and then the mom comes out, and she, like, freaks out because she sees Dracula turn into a bat and fly away. And then the dad runs inside to find the kids. Yeah. And as he's running inside, he passes all of her suitcases. And she was about to leave. What the hell?
Yeah.
And then they're brought together by killing all the monsters and being reunited.
Yeah, there is a really strange, kind of sweet through line. That feels to me more than anything else like the Spielberg stuff.
Yeah. Oh, totally, yeah.
E.T. is about a family that's been broken up. Poltergeist is in the process of being torn apart by external forces. Mm-hmm. But then here you have, also, this couple is going through this fairly young these parents who are maybe in their late 30s. I couldn't tell how old anybody is because the 80s are so strange that way.
Yeah.
But they had kids young, I'm pretty sure. Uh-huh. And they're having genuine relationship issues that they're working through badly.
Oh, yeah. Terribly.
And they're allowed to keep their humanity while all this other insane stuff is running around, and also monsters.
Oh, man, that's that scene in the bedroom when it's the mom tucking in her daughter, Phoebe.
Oh, the candle thing?
Yeah. They keep the candle lit by your bed, and that'll keep the monsters away. And then as she's leaving the room, she goes, "Are you going to yell at him?" And the mom goes, "Honey, I love your father." And the little girl's face just contorts, and she says, what? I meant Sean for scaring me. Terrific moment.
Yeah.
Terrific moment about just the mom having these marital problems, thinking she could a bit talk to her like 4-year-old daughter about it. Great.
Yeah. No, and again, it's the thing that's missing from Stranger Things is like you get Winona Ryder freaking out over her missing child. But all the other stuff just feels like people acknowledging script beats because this is the sort of thing people expect from these movies. They have to have baggage. But this movie, like the baggage it's literally there in the hallway at one point. But it also
we see the baggage.
But it's real.
Yeah.
Like it's
oh my god! When
with.
the fucking cop in Stranger Things goes from being like alcoholic, depressive, shut-in to busting into like CIA headquarters in the span of one episode, just because now he thinks that's important. Like, what? Why'd you even introduce him with all this personal baggage if you're just going to discard it and turn him into, like, action hero?
Yeah.
What happened to the guy? What happened to the hungover mess?
Yeah, it's weird. And David Harbour is so good at playing the mess that when it goes away, it feels like he's playing a different character.
That's the problem with that show all over. As soon as the engine gets revving, they just discard all the subtext and everything they set up. The setup just goes out the window. And the setup's that's the fun shit. That's what you gotta honor.
Yeah.
That's the hook.
Well, and here, I realized watching the Monster Squad again this time that if you did remake it, and I don't know how, like I don't know how you'd repackage it for the present day, but you probably could. Like, as opposed to another season of Stranger Things, I would almost want to see this story told again. But there's a moment where the film sort of comes up to the perfect answer, which is the whole to defuse the whole virgin issue, where a virgin must read the German words to open the gateway to limbo to send Dracula and the monsters away forever.
Of course.
And the teenage girl that they get to do it turns out to have done some stuff.
Yeah.
And then they get
Steve, but he doesn't count.
Yeah. They get a 5-year-old version. So now the line would be, I don't know, just hand stuff, like some other way of implying corruption that is funny instead of
Corruption.
creepy. Well, the whole purity impurity thing that runs through all these movies. But it should be Rudy who reads it.
Yeah.
Like, Rudy, like if that...
He's got to admit that he's not as cool as he said he was. But Rudy's arc is he starts cool and just gets so much cooler. And then it's done.
Yeah.
It's so
Gets
good.
the girl at the end, walks off with his arm around her.
All of it. Even though he blackmailed her into helping them by, like, threatening to post...
Implying that he had nude photo... Well, not implying. Showing her a photograph that I think Frankenstein's monster took.
Yeah. He took it with the camera by accident and then went bogus.
Right. So
bogus.
This bogus photograph of a nude teenage girl.
Yeah. That he's threatening to put up on the bulletin board to show everyone in town.
Which is just, again, so 80s and so gross.
Yeah, absolutely.
First thing that goes out. First thing that you lose in the rewrite. But if
the second thing,
yeah, there's
after a variety of homophobic slurs, those go away.
And let Fat Kid be called Horace. Like that, even his friends call him Fat Kid, which just, again, that feels like that's bad. That feels like even in 1987 people should have known better.
Yeah, I mean, he at least gets his redemptive moment.
Sure.
And
by killing the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, with a fucking shotgun. Turns out to be the easiest thing to kill. The fact that the cops didn't try shooting at it before they just went at it with night clubs is amazing.
That is
Billy clubs? Night clubs.
I think
clubs.
Yeah, Billy clubs. I think that is I get it because it's what you always want from monster movies is to see the monster just knock people aside like they're made of nothing. But you get that other one, which is, I think, the reason people love Duncan Regeer so much, the Dracula walkthrough, where he just marches straight ahead, murdering people left and right.
Yeah, popping cops' heads off.
Yeah, it's really distressing to watch that as an adult. And it's like, oh no, this is a kid's movie, and a dozen people just died.
I was trying to figure out when it was made in terms of, like, the geopolitical situation, because...
End of the Reagan era.
Yes. So it would have been like, essentially, it really feels like a between wars movie in terms of how ineffectual, like, the police and the army are, especially the army. Like, the army's just a punchline that shows up at the end. Like, it's definitely post-Vietnam, and then it's like now, like, war is so everything again. Right. Obviously, like there was like the first Iraq War, which I think sort of got that moving, and then like obviously 9/11 and all that shit. It's just like you just don't see the military represented that way in Hollywood movies anymore. I think there would be like a deep fear of showing disrespect. It really rings like it really just reeks of that, where you're just like, wow, that really was just this short pocket where like people just didn't think of the army that much.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out if it was a direct reference to like E.T. or something like that, where the kids have to operate in secret, so all the adults have to be there to be fooled. And then I thought, no, they're just bad at their, like, cops. The point of this movie is that the police just don't see it, and only the kids understand that monsters are real.
Yeah, it's like you have to believe to you have to open your heart and mind to the possibilities that things outside of your scientific understanding. I mean, it's literally the first line in when you once you get through the cold open and then you smash into the school and they're in the principal's office and he says that line where he goes, Sean, whatever the other kid's name is. Right. I used to be a kid. I used to think monsters were cool, but now maybe I'm just a big kid because I think science is cool. He goes, I dig it, man. Oh, yeah. And then he says, the point is science is real, monsters are not. And then they sort of close up on one kid saying, we don't know that, sir. Yeah. And that's just okay. Mission statement. All right. Kids are open to the possibility. Adults are closed off. It
is also a great line delivery because on the page I can we don't know that, sir. It could be sarcastic. It could be dumb. It could be just a slow kid.
Oh, yeah.
But he does it with such kind of weird investment.
Oh yeah, so earnest. Yeah. Yeah. He's not only do we not know that, we're a bit afraid about the possibility.
We don't trust you to tell us that they're not real.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're everywhere. And also, not only are they everywhere, but they have somehow conspired to have their crates shipped in the most lackadaisical civilian airline air freight company. Oh. But that's that's the Shane Black stuff that I'm used to in all of his other scripts, in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, he wrote Iron Man 3, for God's sake. There's a looseness of official performance that he does so beautifully, and it's just that thing of what the co-pilot's button on that scene. It's I'll be out here making spooky sounds.
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
This is kind of what I want the whole movie to be.
Yeah.
I want to watch adults who aren't fully invested, but then, of course, it's Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Which is the other thing that clearly inspired this movie.
Right, yes.
But you would never put the two of them together. It only just now occurred to me, talking about it now for the first time in 30 years, that there's a continuum between the two.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think what's important to Ghostbusters is that they are all sort of childish men.
Yeah.
They haven't grown up in the traditional sense. They're sort of following a version of being an artist instead of settling down and getting a real job, except their version of quote unquote being an artist is trying to start their own ghost company.
Yeah. And
Ghost
I think,
Force.
now that I think about it, the original posters for Monster Squad probably did. Yes, of course it was, because the tagline, it's gone now. It's not on any of the new art, but the tagline used to be, you know who to call when you have ghosts, but who do you call when you have monsters?
Right.
I am an idiot.
It was right there.
Yeah. But I guess I was just still too young to really put that stuff together in terms of where things come from.
Right.
But also the resulting product is so totally divorced from Ghostbusters. It's not urban, it's not adult. I mean, although actually Rudy and Peter Venkman kind of have a thing going with the harassing, the casual harassment of women.
Yeah, that's the part that we like.
That's the 80s.
That's the part we like.
But it is that sort of giant, a giant story told through the perspective of some very small-minded people, and the fact that their kids actually works for this.
Yeah.
Because, of course they don't trust the police because they don't believe they've seen all the movies where the police. I mean, that's the other thing. There are horror movies in this world. We see posters for them, but maybe not for Dracula and Frankenstein's monster, which is kind of the one thing I was hoping there'd be more references to, that this would be a world where there were Dracula movies, because if he was real, obviously there'd be stories about him and they would work their way into the culture.
Yeah, and these kids do know about it. When they talk about him in their monster club, they're talking about what are the two ways to kill a werewolf, and what are the 2 ways to kill a Dracula? A Dracula.
They never do tell us what the second way to kill a werewolf is.
And that's the joke. That's the payoff of the joke.
There must be another way.
No, there isn't. That's what Rudy knows. He knows, and then he does it, and then he gets his great line. But that's the funniest payoff too. Is when they have that insane rambling, what's the second way to, I don't know, accident with power tools, push them out the window, blow them up with dynamite or something, whatever they say.
And they do all of them.
They do all of that stuff, and then he reconfigures in that great scene.
Yeah. Which is the saddest thing about the werewolf mythology, is that you can't die. That you can't kill yourself. It's always the Lon Chaney Jr. werewolf. It's a direct reference to the old 80s, the rather to the old Universal movies, where he would just walk around begging to be killed. He couldn't do it himself. Oh no, it was horrible. In one of the big team-up movies, like the things that directly inspired the Monster Squad, horror, House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, where all the Universal monsters got together in a movie for the same... Inevitably, it would start on a night that didn't have a full... or a day that didn't have a full moon, and what was his name? Lawrence Talbot, the Lon Chaney character, would just show up and be miserable. He was so sad that he knew at this point, like they kind of got around it with American Werewolf in London by having him have no memory of, like, David Naughton would wake up and feel great, having just murdered a bunch of people.
Oh, right,
but the werewolf thing, you know, you're divorced from your actions, you don't know. But by the time these sequels came around, Lawrence Talbot was so... just like he was begging to be killed. He wanted this torment to end.
He should have made himself a silver bullet.
Well, but that's the other thing. Like, apparently you're just not allowed to kill yourself. It's some weird suicide prevention thing built into the curse.
Yeah,
somehow.
The curse.
It was tragic. And then John Grease shows up. You know, I'm a werewolf, lock me up.
Yeah.
And then we realize...
great scene.
Yeah. They blow him up and he comes back together because that's werewolves, and that's really disturbing.
Yeah.
You can't...
totally. Oh, yeah, he's a very tragic character. He's also, like, the moral like, he's the conscience of the monster side.
Yeah.
He's the one who, like, goes out of his way at great personal risk to warn the cop dad that his son's in danger. Yeah. How he knows about that is left to your imagination.
I assume he remembers the werewolf stuff. I just, you know, he's vaguely aware of the things he's seen.
And like Dracula saying, presumably off camera at some point, all right, these kids have the book. Yeah. So if we don't get it, we're going to kill them.
I assume you overheard him making the phone call to the parents about buying the book.
About buying the book.
Put two and two together.
The book that was on a garage. Just go get the fucking book, man. Go get the book.
I like that about Dracula as well, is that he weirdly ceremonial.
Oh, yeah.
He won't take the amulet. He has to have someone give it to him.
That's true.
3 times he says, give me the amulet.
Give me the amulet,
you know,
you bitch.
Yeah, which is just unnecessary.
Very unnecessary.
But yeah, he's right there. He could simply just take it. It's next to him.
All of those things are like, yeah, you can excuse them by calling him ceremonial. Like, I like that there's ways you could sort of talk yourself into it. When I watch
Monster Rules.
In Monster Rules, yeah. When I watch it, I'm just like, all right, it doesn't fully make sense, but that's fine. Because I don't want you to win. I want the kids to win. So whatever needs to happen to slow down the villain's progress or whatever, fine. Because there's just so much fun being had, like, before and after all those moments that I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
This is like where the plot needs to unnecessarily slow down. Like Dracula, who had so much, it was so easy for him to just put a little hammer through a wall to reveal the amulet, so clearly he could have just done with 10 more hammer hits and then he's got the amulet and he's through, but instead it takes him a full day of rigging up dynamite to take down the rest of this wall. Fine, sure, I don't know.
Well, he has to do it so the house doesn't fall in, obviously. I mean, Dracula is clearly he spent enough time to pick up engineering tips that he knows it's a supporting
So you got to
wall.
use the precision tool of dynamite.
Shaped charges. We've all seen Better Call Saul.
Okay.
Well, there is also, like, the room is filled with crosses. So I assume he's blowing it up so the crosses get covered up by the rubble.
Listen,
and he can go
I love
inside.
the work you're doing right now on this movie's behalf.
I am never going to be caught out by monsters. I grew up right. Which is why it's so frustrating that I don't know the second way to kill a werewolf. Even though you claim the joke is there isn't one.
There is none.
There must be another way. What did they do before bullets?
Only one way to kill a werewolf. Rudy, just so full of breath. Told ya. Only one way to kill a werewolf. It's great.
It's a big laugh line. It is.
And then the fucking tragic last moment from the werewolf guy when he's become the man again with the billowing white shirt with the bullet hole through his chest. He goes, "Thank you."
See, that's what they want.
It's great.
They just want to go. I think Lawrence Talbot said it 2 or 3 times in the course, because he would always die at the end of the werewolf movies, or the Wolfman movies, but then they just bring him back.
Return from the grave. He always return from the grave.
You can't not. I mean, it's a property. There's going to be more.
Yeah,
it's like now with the Marvel movies, you're signed for 5 or 7 or whatever it is. I assume with the Universal, like the Dark Universe thing, which I hoped was leading towards a Monster Squad-like rebirth. Because they tried the thing with the Tom Cruise Mummy movie.
Oh, right.
They were going to reinvent all the Universal monsters, and you just shouldn't. Like, there's no point.
Right.
I think that's the other reason about the Monster Squad working so well. It's a time capsule of the 80s in a weird way that preserves the monsters back when they were still potentially scary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you get away with an Invisible Man movie in the present day that isn't Hollow Man, that isn't something that's really disturbing and ugly?
I don't know how you could make a Frankenstein movie nowadays that wouldn't just be so dull. I just have no idea how you could pull that off.
Penny Dreadful kind of did it by incorporating the creature.
Yeah, was that show any good? No. I started watching it and I was like, hey, this could... Oh, no. And I think by the end of the first episode, I was out.
Yeah. The show was a mess. And I gave up after about halfway through the second season.
Wow.
But
that's a hell of a commitment for something that's a mess.
Again, the idea was really interesting. I love the idea of the ensemble of literary figures, you know, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all that stuff. That movie was terrible, but the idea is kind of cool if you start figuring out, well, yeah, they were all around the same time. That's when this wave happened in literature. What would happen? And it turns out nothing terribly interesting.
Yeah.
But these movies have more ambition. Like the Monster Squad they all have a purpose. They're all working together, some of them unwillingly, but there is a reason for all of this to be happening, and this is the reason. And once every 100 years, this is the story we're telling. Yeah. And because it's a movie instead of an unlimited series, it can be beginning, middle, and end. It can be entertaining and not overstay its well. It's 82 minutes long.
Is that it?
Yeah.
It really feels like it. Just zooms by. Yeah. No, it's a perfect montage.
It's like
perfect 80s montage.
Yes.
It's untopped. Except maybe by like Footloose? What else competes?
Yeah, the preparation thing where they're all getting ready.
Yeah.
So the Blu-ray has a deleted scene, which I think very smartly taken out, where Shane goes into his dad's bedroom, gets his gun, and replaces the bullets with what look like, I don't know, garlic or something, because they didn't have 6 more silver bullets. But there's the gun is just hanging on the bedpost in its holster, and from a present day perspective, it is the most disturbing image,
right?
Because it's played with bouncy music, and it would have been part of this montage. And it's like there's a 5-year-old in this house, and this gun is just there. It's very unpleasant.
I like the montage as it is now, which is like Rudy doing literally everything and everyone else being more or less useless.
That's right. He's making steaks on a lathe.
He steals the crossbows. He makes the steaks. He boils down. He makes silver bullets. Boils down silver in shop class and then molds it into bullets. He just does a heroic amount of work in an afternoon.
Yeah,
and then the other kids are making business cards, writing letters to the army. Just not the business cards is the best bit. You're the monsters are coming tonight. You don't need business cards. Let's go. But it's great. Yeah. Rudy just does it. He just takes care of everything.
He was a good shop student. I hope he got a decent grade. Although he doesn't work on the thing he's supposed to be working on.
That's right. And that's what's going to hurt him right there.
Yeah.
you gotta do your, gotta do your actual assignment too.
There's such a... Now I just want to know what job Rudy ended up with after this.
Oh my God.
Because he failed shop and didn't get his doctorate or whatever. It wasn't his diverging timeline where he's just ended up working as a mechanic or something.
He had a good heart. He had a conscience and a good heart. Whatever he did, he was going to do it honorably.
Yeah.
I feel. He probably just didn't like parents.
Insurance salesman.
Yeah.
Car salesman. Like
one of those honorable insurance or car salesmen.
It would say right on his business card, one of the good ones.
Yeah, that's right. You'd have to believe him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rudy would really have the Nicolas Cage and Peggy Sue got married trajectory.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But they always want to make these movies feel like they're tied up in little packages, so the ending comes when the whole town is celebrating and the camera dollies up and out.
And then you hear a rap song going over the plot points
that
of
was
the movie
not
you just
a good
watched.
rap song.
I like it a lot.
That is the whitest rap song.
the Monster Squad.
And it has the it has that musical sting, dun, 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 that old-timey musical sting. Mm-hmm. That's weirdly enough, that's sort of the spirit of the whole film. It's trying to merge the new and the old and coming up with something different entirely. It is a mutant thing.
But it feels, to me, it just feels like the 80s. Yeah. In such a good way. Such a nice way. Mostly.
Yeah. Other than the occasional sexism and homophobia.
You get some of the baggage for sure.
Yeah. I was kind of amazed going over all of these sort of genre splicing things that happened at the time. The only one that really doesn't have anything is Back to the Future, because the sexism is built right in. with the whole Oedipal stuff.
Right.
Because it can't have a romantic subplot.
Right.
And Biff's a rapist, and that, again, he's the villain. It's okay. Like that stuff is baked into the concept to be morally on the right side of history in a way that all the other movies just weren't.
I feel like Spielberg was more aware of that stuff too. Appeared to be, you know.
Yeah. Well, the Goonies has the scene. That's right. The Goonies has a scene where Josh Brolin looks up somebody's skirt with a rearview mirror. But
I forgot about that.
Yeah, no. Everybody conveniently forgets about that scene. It's pretty early on, but it's like it's a character point that establishes that he's horny.
Yeah, horny guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the 80s were a horny time.
Yes. It's hard to explain it to people now who just didn't grow up with it. Like the Reagan era was like it was sexist and kind of racist, not as much as it is these days, but politically, like, America was going full capitalist, and if you could have if you could get something, you could have it. So the entitlement thing is there, and it's like open season on stereotypes and everything else. The Monster Squad doesn't do too much of that, I think, because the kids are innocent.
They are innocent, but they do, like, it does have that 80s quality of, like, the 80s obsession with the 50s, which is, like, again, Reaganish.
Sure.
Like, the small town that they're in has a very, like, 50s suburbia feel to it.
It might not be 87 in there. It might be, like, 62.
Yeah, the 80s touches come more from just, like, the t-shirts they're wearing. But, yeah, you see, like, the drive-in movie that he watches from his roof, like, the radio tuned to it. It feels old-fashioned for the time, but then the pace of it, certainly the pace of the dialogue, and then, like, the music and all that stuff. There's, like, a fun, like, this is what movies can do now quality to it.
And the level of effects, the sophistication. I think like the Stan Winston shop is taking great pleasure in doing these monsters.
Yeah.
The way they couldn't have done them in the 30s and 40s.
Right, totally. Yeah.
With just like animatronics and
the werewolf transformation scenes are amazing.
It's pretty good, and it's done in a way that was done in back in the day, where you get flashes of the progression rather than sitting and watching the whole thing. There's one moment that sort of quotes the more modern werewolf stuff with a snout pushing out of a face, but otherwise the scene in the phone booth with the lights changing, flickering, and the pieces of the phone booth obscuring or transformation, that's like straight out of the old 30s movies.
Totally.
You could just do it in stages. And I mean, the Gill Man he's the least interesting of all the characters.
He's
no
the
facial
shittiest.
Expression really, and he doesn't get to do much.
But they shoot him well, like when he emerges from, like, the swamp that's behind their house.
Is it a bayou? Is there a reference to a bayou somewhere? I could never figure out where this is taking place.
I didn't mind it because I was like, first of all, it looks so beautiful to shoot, like, a swamp that it's just, like, lush and so many great colors,
which makes sense.
It is a lagoon. But then when he emerges from that holding Dracula's or Frankenstein's coffin, great shot.
It is. It's like it's obviously this is the stuff that Dekker and Black have been dreaming of their whole childhoods. Like they're the movie nuts who get to play with the toys. Again, just to bring back the Predator, that's what they did with that movie. They made a Predator sequel that feels the 80s feeling of it is amazing, but it's also self-aware, and it feels like you're watching all the sequels that would have been made in a universe where the Predator films never stopped.
Right.
So you've got characters recurring and connections and things, like Gary Busey's kid shows up as Gary Busey's kid, basically, from Predator 2.
Right.
And there's a weird sense that the world has been developing all along, and you also get the sense that these guys have been thinking about, like, Shane Black was in the first Predator, and he's been thinking about what he would have done ever since with the property, and now you get to see, they would do this. And there'd be this facility, and you know what, why wouldn't the Predator do that now? They can do that now. And it's like the climax of 7 movies. I saw it the first day, I think, of TIFF, or the second, like it was the Friday morning, maybe? It was right after the Midnight Madness premiere, and it was a 9 a.m. screening, and it was in the IMAX room. And it was just like...
Was anyone else there?
Oh, it was packed. Yeah. And 20 minutes in, it was like, this is the best movie I've ever seen. And after another hour, it's still pretty good. And the ending whiffs a bit, but they find a way to make it feel like it never left.
That's good. I'm wary. I'm wary of all of these nostalgia projects now. They never quite They never quite hit it for me, but certainly I'll give it a chance.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well,
What do I have to do? What do I got? Something better to do with my time? I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, and nobody's standing on ceremony. You can watch Predator. No one has to know.
But everyone will have to know, because if I don't like it, I'll have to say something about it publicly on a goddamn tweet or something, and then get a bunch of angry responses, and then regret anything.
Nah, I mean, honestly, if you have love in your heart for the Monster Squad, I think you'll be fine with the Predator.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready. I do love the first.
Yeah,
and I love moments of the second. And those are the only two I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't respect or consider the Alien versus movies. Those are garbage. But there's things in the third one in Predators that are actually pretty clever.
Yeah,
it's not bad. It's got an amazing cast. Like Walton Goggins is in it, and Lawrence Fishburne shows up, and just Topher Grace is well used, which is something you can't say about every movie. Yeah, but you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
But it's like the premise has always had more potential than people seem to know what to do with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fucking cool looking thing. Like, there's always potential when you got a cool looking thing.
Yeah, and the first movie is like, it's perfect. I was stunned watching it the last time, realizing there's no exposition, there's no dialogue that tells you what's going on. There's theories. And there are people who... Somebody else pointed this out on Twitter a little while ago. The first Predator is amazing because it is a movie about people who do their jobs and do their jobs perfectly, and it doesn't save them. Like, they're the best at what they do, and they know what to do, and as soon as they figure out what's going on, they act accordingly, and they're all still wiped out. Right,
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I do love movies where it's just like the amount of time and the location are just so confined. It's just like, find out about the thing, try to deal with the thing, succeed or fail at dealing with the thing, and it all happens like wherever it happens,
Yeah. The Monster Squad takes place over 4 days?
Monster Squad's pretty tight. Yeah,
it's
like
compressed.
The second half of the movie is one day.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. Like, they realize like it's tomorrow's date, 100 years ago, and they're like, if we're gonna deal with this, we gotta do it now. And then it's just bam, you're into. Now we're cooking.
Yeah. How fast does the Postal Service work to get that letter to the Army?
Yeah. Especially when it does not appear that this kid has any knowledge of how to mail things. He doesn't have a stamp.
Yeah. He may have simply just put it on the back of a bird or something.
Yeah, it's true. It was a better time for the Postal Service. That's the big takeaway from that movie. Yeah. Give me one fun fact about the movie from the Blu-ray that I don't know about. Blow my mind for one moment.
I'm trying to think if there's anything we haven't touched on yet. They don't get too deep into the Holocaust survivor aspect.
That part is crazy. Yeah. That's so crazy. I don't know why that's there. Why is that there?
I don't know either. I think it's supposed to be a way to like show that there's real evil and these are just cartoons that we're dealing with, but at the same time, why would you even do that?
Don't remind us of that. Like, we know that. Yeah. But for this movie that's such a romp, it's just like a little... I mean, it's so ham-fisted that it plays as funny, which I think has got to be the opposite of the intention.
Yeah, no, it couldn't have been, because like that lingering shot of the tattoo as he closes the door... Like, that's supposed to be a moment where we should think things through. But they've shown the menorah in the background in his house, and it's like one of those
things. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's on a table near the window. It's framed. I think the first time they go inside, it's framed in the shot in a way that you can't miss it if you know what it is.
I see.
And they should have just left it at that, because
I wonder if there was any feeling among them that like a German figure in a non-German, like an American small town, you would instantly think Nazi. So I wonder if going like Jewish Holocaust survivor was their way of being like, nope, not a Nazi. Just to be clear, not a Nazi. Like, one of the good guys, here we go.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an insane moment.
Yeah.
I have to prepare people for it when I watch it with new people.
Yeah. It's always weird when that happens in movies that are like, even the Avengers has a moment where like Loki's taking over Berlin, I think, and the elderly Jewish man refuses to kneel before him and says, there are always people like you who try to dominate people like me, and you just think, okay, we've established Captain America, but yeah, this is the thing that never sits right. Like, there was, like, I think, what was it? The comic books, the Human Torch killed Hitler way back in the Marvel Comics in the 60s. They wrote a scene where the original Human Torch, who was an android, who predates the Fantastic Four stuff, kills Hitler in front of Captain America.
Yeah.
And Hitler says to his lieutenant, as he burns to death, tell them it was suicide. And you're thinking...
Oh my God.
Yeah, and you're thinking, no, this is just like, don't do this at all. You're bending over backwards to make sense of a fantastical world where this real evil happened.
Yeah.
And unless you're going to go like all the way with Man in the High Castle and have an alternate universe where the Nazis won the war, you just shouldn't invoke that stuff. Like, I'm still really mad at Tarantino for Inglourious Bastards.
Oh God.
And just deciding that, you know, like, some Jews shot Hitler. Well, they didn't, though.
Man, I don't know. I don't know about that movie. I don't know about Django Unchained. I don't know about this whole like historical revisionism that Tarantino does in his like cartoony style. It just feels rotten to me. I mean, obviously there's always going to be fun scenes and like fun bits of dialogue and like interestingly portrayed characters because he can bring that out in people, but like there's also some bullshit. And it just feels like it like does a disservice to real things.
Yeah.
Well, he's not the guy for those stories.
Yeah, I simultaneously I can understand why he'd want to make a movie about the Manson murders and why he shouldn't.
Right. Yeah, because he's just going to make it a romp.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Do we need that again?
I do not think we do. I don't think we ever do. I mean, it just, again, it's a way of him, this is so far off topic, but it's a way for him to not engage with the present, which is his whole thing. Like, the last movie he made that was set in a recognizable present day was Jackie Brown.
Oh, and that's the best one.
Yeah. I mean, the Kill Bill films are ostensibly set in the present, but they're fantasies.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to be now. Like, he doesn't want to confront the real world, I don't think. I mean, I don't think he ever has.
But Jackie Brown was that actually set in the present?
Yeah, it's an Elmore Leonard adaptation.
Of course it was, because that's why it has like, that's why it feels so good, because like, and at the time why it felt so uncomfortable, because some of the style is so ugly. Mm-hmm. I mean, that movie's an ugly movie.
Yeah.
In a great way. Like, you've never seen Robert De Niro look worse. You've never seen like a lot of those actors look like more frumpy and less charismatic, but then that was kind of the whole thing. It felt like a total like mirror image or like a shadow image of like Pulp Fiction, which made everyone look way cooler than they were.
Yeah, it's an underbelly movie.
Yeah, it's an underbelly. You're
sort of soaking in the just the general unpleasantness of all of it.
Yeah. It's good. I like that one a lot. Every time I think that I really maybe just don't like Tarantino, I remember that movie. And I'm like, nah, I really like it.
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs is perfect. Like, Pulp Fiction's pretty good. But
yeah, I haven't. It's been a while since I gotta go back. I'm too like, now it's just the new ones are. And actually, I don't know. Mixed feelings. Because I didn't mind the one where it's all the cabin and
the Hateful Eight.
Yeah,
yeah. There's a good 2-hour movie in there. Anyway, we're way off topic, and
I think we're on topic.
I like to. I mean, sure, a Tarantino monster movie would be cool. He kind of did that with From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yes, I agree. A Tarantino monster movie would be. I mean, yes, that's really what it is. Is like Tarantino is an escapist filmmaker, and instead of trying to bring his escapism to some real life historical tragedies, maybe he should bring it to escapist subjects.
That would.
Even though I think that the Hateful Eight had some interesting things to say.
Oh, I like that. No, I like the Hateful Eight a lot. But I mean, ultimately, it is like it's the thing, right? Like it's the thing in Reservoir Dogs.
That's right.
But we've sort of gone full circle around the entire film. So now I get to ask the question I've been waiting to ask: is there anything from the Monster Squad that you yourself have used in your work? Have you incorporated or borrowed or stolen?
Yeah.
Reference?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if specific moments or anything. Well, actually, yeah, there's a moment in Cavendish, this show that Andy Bush and I just are almost done making for CBC. Comes out January 10th.
Oh.
But there's a moment where in the pilot episode, this town believes that there's a beast, a sort of semi-supernatural hints of a werewolf beast that is like, just once a year, you just got to lock up on Beast Day and... Just be aware. You can put your offering out, and then whether it's real or not, no one's 100% sure, but it's a nice excuse for family to get together and stay inside for the night anyway, right? So sort of like thrown away that way. But then something happens and everyone's convinced it's the Beast. So there's this town hall meeting and everyone's shouting out what they want to do. And then at one point we've got an old man who stands up and goes, "I'm the Beast! Lock me up! Kill me!" And then the mayor says, "You're not the Beast, Horace, sit down." And he kind of goes, "Oh." And he sits down. But anyway, yeah, that's the werewolf scene from Monster Squad where he goes, "Lock me up!" Which I've had in my heart and soul for 20 years. But mostly what I took from Monster Squad, and I've just used in everything, and probably just took, it's more appropriate just to say I took it from Shane Black, but it's just overlapping quick dialogue. Yeah. Like overlapping dialogue that is so fast that you can't try to make it so fast that you can barely register a punchline before you're sort of past it, which now is like, it's like a signature of Armando Iannucci too, but like my first exposure to it was in those Shane Black movies. Like that was always my biggest. You definitely hear it in Spielberg movies from that period too, like Jaws or E.T. or Poltergeist. Like there's like a nice natural flow, but Shane Black really like ramped it up. So like some of the dialogue sequences in Monster Squad, like when the two bullies are coming at Fat Kid outside school and they're doing this whole like mock news live on the street report about him blocking traffic, and it just goes so fast that you can't hear every word, but it's just such a joy in the energy of it. So 100% just like everything I've ever made, I just grabbed that element and used it. So yeah, we just call it overlapping dialogue, but that's the spirit of it. We're just like, we want dialogue we don't want it to be like set up, punchline, wait, set up, punchline, wait for like this imagined reaction. We want it to just be like flowing, literally people talking over each other. You miss a few words, that's fine. The energy will like propel you through it.
Yeah. Which is weird because I'm just thinking like Room for Rent is so the opposite of that. Like there's so much stillness between you and Gelman because your characters are trying to figure each other out in every single moment. That it's like, as you're saying this, it's like, no, I get this from almost everything else I've seen, but this other exception is coming up where
the thing I didn't write.
Well, there it is. That must be it.
Yeah, it's also that's Brett Gelman's vibe is like he does that. He's very deliberate and and takes those pauses and enjoys like the sort of tension, the very like uncomfortable tension between characters. And it's not my vibe at all. Like, I'll, gladly participate in it, and it was like interesting and fun to like see how that felt to do it that way. But
it's really fascinating to watch that come out of you in the movie because it's not what I expect from you.
Yeah, you can see a couple scenes where I'm like sort of digging in a bit more to like what I'm used to. Like, my favorite scene to shoot in that movie was the one in the cop car with Patrick J. Adams. Yeah. Who was just like so fucking funny. It really caught me off guard. It's not like I've seen a ton of stuff with him in it. Like I've never really watched Suits, but
I have not seen him do comedy like that before.
That was it. Is like I was told like he doesn't do a ton of comedy, but like he's a great actor, and I think you're gonna really like performing with him. And he was just so funny, just like so in it the entire time, riffing, being so quick, and like did it more the way that I'm used to doing. So like we filmed way more than we needed to in that cop car scene just because it was just fun the different ways that he would like accidentally threaten me with his gun, and then we would riff on that, and then we riff on like his like rap career that I think is like a subplot that had to get cut from the movie for time, but like he's like a cop with like a burgeoning like side career in rap.
Everybody has dreams.
That's right. Anyway, but yeah, you're right to point that out. And I think like, yeah, I definitely like struggled at times with that movie because it was like a different tone than I would naturally like throw myself into. But what is this career for if not to try different things?
Yeah, no,
expand what you do. Yeah.
My thanks to Mark Little, who you can watch facing off against Brett Gelman in Room for Rent on iTunes and elsewhere, or battling monsters in Gary and His Demons on CBC Digital in Canada and Verve in the US. And keep an eye out for Cavendish on CBC January 10th. It does sound kind of great. Thanks also to Angie Power. She knows what she did. You can find Mark on Twitter at MarkLittle, all one word, and you can find the Monster Squad in a very good DVD and Blu-ray special edition from Lionsgate Home Entertainment. It's also available on iTunes and Google Play. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you feel like leaving a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy the show, that would be greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps. It truly does. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.